I accidentally connected to my wife's car Bluetooth and heard, LOL, his kid isn't even his. The DNA test would destroy him. My blood boiled, but I controlled myself. I still drove the kids to school. Every day, 5 days later, she regretted everything she said. So, let me lay this out. I, 34, have been together with my wife, Maria, 32F, for nearly a decade now, and we've been married for 8 of those years. We share a 6-year-old son, Grayson, who genuinely represents my entire world, or at least he did, until the shattering events of last week made me question if he was truly my son. I'm still actively trying to process the magnitude of all this, so I sincerely apologize if this account seems somewhat disorganized or jumbled. My brain is simply, functioning far below optimal levels right now. RN. It all happened on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday. Nothing particularly special about the day. I was taking my lunch break, casually scrolling through Reddit. The irony isn't lost on me now, LOL. And decided to give Maria a call to ask if she wouldn't mind picking up a few necessary items for dinner later. Her plan was to have lunch with her friend Vivian. They maintain this weekly ritual at some ridiculously overpriced sandwich establishment that Maria inexplicably adored. Whatever makes her happy, I figured. So I tapped her contact on my phone screen, and it initiated the connection process. However, instead of the familiar ringing tone, I was abruptly met with the sound of voices. It took a brief moment to register, but I quickly realized my phone had inadvertently established a connection with her car's Bluetooth system. This tends to happen occasionally when she's within close enough range, and the call automatically routes through the car's speakers. She must have been parked in the lot nearby or something similar. And then, I heard it. Vivian's voice, startlingly clear. LOL, his kid isn't even his. The DNA test would absolutely destroy him. I physically froze in place, my sandwich suspended halfway to my mouth, my breathing halted, the whole dramatic 9 yards. My initial, desperate thought was that they had to be discussing someone else. Surely they weren't talking about me. It just had to be about another person. But then, Maria let out that specific, unmistakable laugh. The one she reserves for things she finds both amusingly funny and slightly scandalous. And she responded, I know, right? Sometimes when Thomas is playing with Grayson, or helping him with his homework, I honestly just have to leave the room. It becomes too much to bear. In that instant, my heart felt like it completely stopped beating. Vivian then inquired how she had managed to keep such a monumental secret concealed for such an extended period. And Maria, she actually began bragging about it. She recounted how Damon, her boss by the way, BTW, and she shared this incredibly intense connection approximately 6.5 years prior during a work conference held in Chicago. She elaborated on how she had been on the verge of leaving me for him, but then discovered she was pregnant. She explained how Damon wasn't prepared to step up and assume responsibility, so she simply allowed me to continue believing Grayson was mine all this time. As I'm absorbing this devastating narrative, my hands began shaking so uncontrollably that I dropped my phone onto the floor. I didn't even register that the screen had cracked. Like, who could possibly care about a mere cracked screen when your entire existence feels like it's just been shattered into a million pieces? And then, Maria added, Thomas would never even question it. He's so utterly clueless. Plus, she continued, he's completely obsessed with Grayson and genuinely thinks he looks exactly like his own dad. More laughter followed. I immediately hung up the call. I couldn't physically endure listening to another second. At that precise moment, I swear, I almost drove directly to that sandwich place with the full intention of confronting her right then and there. I was legitimately sitting in my car, my hands gripping the steering wheel with such force that my knuckles turned stark white. I have never, in my entire life, experienced such a profound and consuming anger. But something, call it a flicker of self-preservation or perhaps just sheer shock, held me back. So, I forced myself to take 3 deep, deliberate breaths. Thank you, utterly crappy workplace stress management seminar for that one useful tip. And made a conscious decision. I was not going to lose my composure. Not yet. This situation required careful calculation and planning. I immediately called in sick for the remainder of the workday, informing my supervisor I suspected I had food poisoning or some other vague ailment. I then drove around aimlessly for what felt like 2 solid hours, just thinking, replaying the conversation, trying to make sense of the wreckage. All the while, my phone was incessantly blowing up with notifications, group chats pinging, emails arriving, the usual digital noise. But I couldn't concentrate on any of that trivial crap. When I finally managed to regain some semblance of mental clarity, I reached out to an old friend from high school, Jackin, who is now a practicing lawyer. I didn't delve into the specifics over the phone, merely asking if he could provide a recommendation for a legal professional specializing in family law issues. He must have detected something profoundly wrong in the tone of my voice because he managed to squeeze me in for a consultation that very same afternoon. The lawyer meticulously laid out my available options. Divorce proceedings in our state operate on a no-fault basis, he explained, but pointed out that documented infidelity can potentially influence the division of assets in certain circumstances. He strongly advised me to begin the process of gathering concrete evidence, securing my personal finances, and handling all the practical, necessary steps that seem so overwhelmingly difficult when your brain feels like it's literally on fire. But that's precisely what I resolved to do. I returned home that evening and somehow, through sheer force of will, managed to act completely normal. I helped prepare dinner alongside Maria, assisted Grayson with his spelling homework, and even sat through some mindless, stupid reality television show on Netflix, with her curled up beside me on the couch. All the while, internally, I felt like I was constantly on the verge of throwing up, screaming at the top of my lungs, or quite possibly both simultaneously. The subsequent few days followed the exact same agonizing pattern. Wake up, prepare breakfast, exchange a goodbye kiss with Maria as if nothing was wrong, and then drive Grayson to school. Those car rides were pure torture. Looking at him in the rearview mirror, this wonderful little boy, and intensely wondering how I had never before noticed that he doesn't possess my eyes, or my chin structure, or really any discernible physical trait of mine. Meanwhile, behind this facade of normalcy, I was strategically making moves. I opened a completely separate bank account at an entirely different financial institution. I meticulously downloaded and securely backed up all our joint financial records. I initiated the transfer of small, incremental amounts of money into the new account. I made photocopies of all crucial documents, deeds, titles, insurance papers. I took detailed photographs of family heirlooms and other personal belongings that were definitively mine prior to the marriage. I documented every single action meticulously in a password-protected Google Doc. Maria remained completely oblivious, suspecting absolutely nothing. And why would she? According to her own words, I'm just clueless, right? I even succeeded in covertly swiping Grayson's toothbrush to use for a DNA test. I ordered one of those readily available home testing kits online, opting for expedited shipping. The anticipation, the waiting for confirmation, is absolutely killing me, even though deep down, I already feel like I know the truth. Does that make any logical sense? Probably not. The most challenging aspect through all of this? Continuing to be a father to Grayson. None of this catastrophic situation is remotely his fault. I have been the only father figure he has ever known throughout his entire life. When he asks me to read him a bedtime story at night or eagerly wants to show me his latest intricate Minecraft creation, I still do it. I still love him immensely. That fundamental part hasn't changed in the slightest, which paradoxically makes everything else feel infinitely more complicated and painful. 5 days have now passed since the revelation. I still haven't confronted Maria. I'm still driving Grayson to school each morning. I'm still kissing my wife goodbye in the mornings, maintaining the illusion that everything is perfectly fine. But it's emphatically not fine. And very soon, she is going to come to the stark realization of just how profoundly not fine things truly are. I have already arranged our anniversary dinner for this upcoming Saturday, securing reservations at that rather upscale restaurant downtown she's perpetually mentioned wanting to experience. Naturally, she believes I'm making a grand romantic gesture. Little does she suspect the special gift I actually have planned for her, the DNA test results, which are scheduled to arrive just before then. I'm not typically the sort of person inclined towards revenge. I always genuinely believed I was better than resorting to such tactics. But hearing her laughing with her friend about how she's been systematically lying to me for 6 long years about something of this magnitude, yeah, this is far from over. Not by a long shot. I'll provide an update after Saturday's events unfold. Wish me luck, Reddit. Update. First things first. I want to extend a massive thank you to everyone for the incredible outpouring of support on my previous post. I honestly never anticipated that thousands of individuals would take an interest in the train wreck that my life has seemingly become. But here we are. Apologies that it has taken me a few days to provide this update. I've been somewhat preoccupied with the task of systematically burning my life down to the ground, albeit in the best possible way under the circumstances. So, where did I leave off? Ah, yes, the anniversary dinner. But allow me to rewind just a bit first. Those 3 days stretching between my last post and that fateful Saturday felt like the absolute longest, most agonizing days of my entire freaking life. Waking up beside Maria each morning felt like a slow form of suffocation. Watching her get ready for work, all radiant smiles and affectionate kisses, while possessing the sickening knowledge that she was likely going to spend her day interacting with the very man who actually fathered the boy I raised as my son. It was pure, unadulterated torture. The DNA test kit arrived on Wednesday afternoon. I had fortunately arranged to work from home, WFH, that day, and practically intercepted the delivery guy at the door. Maria was safely at her office, affording me the privacy I desperately needed to open it. It still took me a good 20 minutes, however, to actually summon the courage to break the seal on the envelope. I found myself pacing relentlessly around our kitchen, staring intently at the package as if I expected it to physically leap up and bite me. The results contained within were precisely what my gut had been screaming at me: a 0% probability that I was Grayson's biological father. Despite anticipating this outcome, the confirmation still felt exactly like being hit full force by a speeding truck. You understand? It was like I knew, but now I knew. Official confirmation. I spent a solid hour just sitting numbly on the cold bathroom floor, focusing solely on the act of breathing. Then, I managed to pull myself together and finalize the intricate plan I had been formulating. Thursday morning arrived and I met with Jackin, my lawyer buddy, once again. I presented him with the definitive DNA results, and he diligently helped me get all my legal ducks meticulously arranged in a row. Legal jargon can be incredibly tedious, but essentially, I had already successfully transferred approximately 60% of our joint savings into my newly established separate account. I possessed verified copies of documentation for practically everything we owned together. I had proactively changed the passwords on all my personal online accounts. Most importantly, I had all the necessary divorce paperwork prepared and ready for filing first thing on Monday morning. Friday. On Friday, I took a deep breath and contacted Damon's wife, Malia, through Facebook. I had never met her personally before, but her profile was publicly accessible, and I strongly felt she deserved to be informed of the truth as well. I composed and sent her a carefully worded message stating simply that I possessed important information concerning her husband and my wife. Facebook indicated she read the message almost immediately but offered no response. Fine. The ball was now squarely in her court. Saturday morning, our anniversary. Maria was noticeably giddy, clearly operating under the assumption that I was playing the role of Mr. Romance Extraordinaire. She departed for a mani-pedi session, which she naturally charged to our joint credit card, while I finalized my own preparations. I carefully placed the official DNA results inside an anniversary card, along with printed screenshots of incriminating text messages exchanged between her and Damon that I had discovered synced on our shared family iPad. Pro tip for anyone contemplating infidelity: perhaps avoid using the family iPad that automatically syncs messages. SMH. Dinner was scheduled for 7 p.m. at that upscale Italian place downtown. The reservations had ironically been made weeks prior, long before my entire world imploded. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. I arrived a full 15 minutes early, feeling nervous as hell, AF, constantly checking my phone every 30 seconds like a lunatic. The waitress attending the nearby tables probably assumed I was being stood up or something equally pathetic. Then, Maria walked in. I won't lie, she looked absolutely stunning. Red dress, professionally done hair, the whole 9 yards. For one fleeting, treacherous split second, just a minuscule moment, I almost felt a pang of guilt about the devastation I was about to unleash. Almost. She sat down, radiating excitement, chattering about how she couldn't believe I had remembered this specific restaurant was the one she'd been eager to try. She ordered some expensive-sounding fancy wine whose name I couldn't possibly pronounce. Throughout the initial moments, she was being excessively touchy. her hand resting on my arm, engaging in playful footsie beneath the table. The entire time I just kept nodding, forcing a smile, while feeling like I was slowly dying inside. So we proceeded to order our meals. The appetizers arrived promptly. She, of course, immediately started taking pictures for her Instagram feed. Gotta maintain those appearances, right? Then, she coyly asked if I had gotten her anything for our anniversary, delivering the question with that little pouty expression that used to seem endearing, but now merely ignited a desire within me to flip the entire table over. That was my cue. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the envelope. A nice, tasteful blue one, emblazoned with Happy Anniversary in elegant silver lettering. Real classy. Maria's face instantly lit up. She was clearly anticipating jewelry or some other expensive trinket. She eagerly opened the envelope, pulled out the card, and a cascade of papers tumbled out onto the tablecloth. She looked momentarily confused, then began to read the documents. I sincerely wish I had possessed a hidden camera to capture the rapid succession of emotions that flickered across her face in the subsequent 10 seconds. It was like witnessing the 5 stages of grief compressed into a lightning-fast sequence. Initial confusion, morphing into profound shock, followed swiftly by denial, then burgeoning anger, culminating in this strange, unsettlingly blank expression. She began whispering frantically, insisting that she could explain, that the situation wasn't what it appeared to be, that she had indeed made a terrible mistake, but swore it was just a single instance, something that happened a very long time ago. I just sat there in silence, not uttering a single word, allowing her to continue digging the hole deeper and deeper for herself. Then, her volume escalated significantly. She started accusing me of violating her privacy, proclaiming that I had absolutely no right to snoop through her personal belongings, or to obtain a DNA test without her explicit permission. She accused me of deliberately trying to humiliate her in public. That's when I finally broke my silence. I calmly informed her that I hadn't snooped at all. She and Vivian had conveniently broadcasted their entire incriminating conversation over her car's Bluetooth for me to hear. Her face instantly drained of all color, turning ghostly white. I continued, telling her I had already consulted extensively with Jackin, my lawyer. I informed her that I had already moved the majority of our shared funds. I revealed that the divorce papers were finalized and ready to be filed first thing Monday morning. And crucially, I told her that Malia, the man's wife, now knew everything as well. The restaurant was bustling, packed with patrons, and people were undeniably staring at our table now. The waiter hovered awkwardly nearby, clearly hesitant to approach our volatile situation. Maria began to cry. Not the delicate cinematic tears you see in movies, but ugly, messy crying, with mascara streaking down her face and her nose dripping uncontrollably. She started begging me, pleading with me not to proceed with this, desperately professing her love for me, insisting that Grayson needed his father, claiming that we could somehow work through this. I simply posed one single question to her. Why? Her response was so utterly pathetic, it borders on comical. She mumbled something about how she and Damon shared this connection, but conceded he wasn't reliable or dependable. She claimed she knew I would be a good, stable father. She had apparently convinced herself that this elaborate deception was ultimately better for everyone this way. Better for everyone, that is, except for me, the person whose entire life was built on her lie. Anyway, I calmly paid for my half of the bill, leaving her responsible for covering her own portion. Petty? I know, but undeniably satisfying in that moment. And then, I simply walked out of the restaurant. She trailed behind me all the way to the parking lot, still sobbing hysterically and creating quite a public scene. Predictably, several people were now recording the unfolding drama on their phones, which only seemed to intensify her hysteria. I got into my car, rolled down the window just enough, and coldly informed her that I would return tomorrow to collect my personal belongings. I instructed her to tell Grayson that I had to go away unexpectedly for work for a few days, just until I could figure out a way to adequately explain the situation to him. The remainder of that night remains somewhat of a blur in my memory. I checked myself into a downtown hotel. Maria proceeded to call my phone 57 times. 57. She left 29 voicemails, each one progressively more desperate and frantic than the last. She bombarded me with over 100 text messages, the content ranging wildly from pathetic begging and pleading to outright threats, only to cycle back to more desperate begging. Sunday morning, she was still relentlessly at it, Now, her tactic shifted to threats, claiming she would take Grayson away and ensure I never saw him again if I didn't immediately return home. She accused me of abandoning my family, vowing she would make certain everyone we knew learned what an utter asshole I was being. I finally responded with a single, concise text message. Check your email. I had forwarded her the damning screenshots of her revealing conversation with Vivian, attached the official DNA results, and included pictures of her and Damon captured at a recent work event, looking decidedly cozy and intimate. I told her plainly that if she wanted to play dirty, I possessed far more ammunition than she could possibly imagine. Radio silence ensued after that message. Around noon that day, my mom called. Apparently, Maria had contacted her, weeping hysterically, claiming we'd had a major fight and that I had stormed out. My mom instantly knew something more serious was amiss, because I never just walk out during arguments. I'm inherently more of the let's sit down and talk this through rationally type of guy. I gave my mom the essential details of the situation. Her reaction transitioned from stunned shock to incandescent fury in approximately 3 seconds flat. She declared she was coming right over to help me retrieve my belongings and had to be firmly talked out of showing up at our house brandishing a baseball bat. My good buddy Derek graciously offered me his spare room to crash in for a few days while I searched for a new apartment. I managed to find one and get it lined up, ready for move-in starting next week. It's nothing extravagant, but importantly, it allows pets. I've always wanted a dog. Maria was allergic. Monday morning, exactly as planned, Jackin filed the divorce papers. Maria was officially served with them while she was at work. According to mutual friends who later relayed the information, she experienced a complete and utter meltdown upon receiving them and was subsequently sent home early from her job. Tuesday, I finally saw Grayson. It was, without a doubt, the single hardest conversation I have ever had in my entire life. Trying to explain to a sensitive 6-year-old boy why Daddy wouldn't be living at home anymore, without burdening him with the ugly, adult truth of the real reason. It was excruciating. He cried, and later, in private, I cried too. I promised him, with all the sincerity I could muster, that absolutely nothing would change in our relationship, that I would still religiously take him to his soccer practices, help him diligently with his homework, and continue doing all the normal dad stuff we always did together. Wednesday brought a text message from Malia, Damon's wife. She informed me that she and Damon were currently taking a break while they attempted to figure things out between them. She asked if perhaps we could meet for coffee sometime soon, mentioning she had some questions. I haven't responded to her yet. There's simply too much swirling on my own plate right now. Today, Maria's mom called me. She's always been a genuinely sweet lady who, I sensed, never fully approved of the way Maria sometimes treated me. She expressed her profound disappointment but admitted she wasn't entirely surprised by the revelations. She commented that Maria had, unfortunately, always possessed a selfish streak, even dating back to her childhood. She then asked, rather tentatively, if she would still be permitted to see Grayson sometimes. I immediately reassured her, of course. None of this complicated family drama is Grayson's fault in any way. So that's the current state of affairs. Maria's personal reputation is effectively in shambles. Her work situation is, understandably, incredibly awkward. AF. I'm temporarily staying with Derek until my new apartment becomes available, all the while trying desperately to maintain some semblance of normalcy for Grayson's sake. Oh, and as for Vivian, apparently she's gone completely radio silent, deleted her Instagram profile and seemingly vanished from social media altogether. I suppose witnessing your best friend's life spectacularly implode, largely due to your own careless gossip, tends to be rather awkward. I don't really know what else to add at this point. I'm still actively processing everything. There are moments when I feel this bizarre sense of liberation, of freedom. And then there are other moments when I'm just overcome with profound sadness for the life and the future that could have been, the one that was stolen by deceit. I'll post another update when there's more significant news to share. Thanks once again for all the unexpected support. Internet strangers can actually be pretty cool sometimes. Edit. Holy crap, this blew up again. No, I absolutely do not have screenshots to share publicly. That would be incredibly messed up and inappropriate. Yes, I am still seeing Grayson on a very regular basis. No, I certainly do not hate him. He is completely innocent in all of this mess. Yes, I did get tested for STDs and thankfully, all results came back clear. Please stop asking about Malia. There is absolutely nothing happening between us on that front. TLDR, I confronted my cheating wife, Maria, with definitive DNA results during our anniversary dinner, which resulted in a very public meltdown. The divorce is actively in progress. My main focus continues to be trying my best to remain a good, consistent dad to Grayson, despite the incredibly challenging circumstances. Final update. Hey Reddit. It's certainly been a minute since my last update graced these pages. I'm not gonna lie, a significant part of me just wanted to completely disappear off the grid and never consciously think about this whole traumatic ordeal ever again. But I made a promise to provide a final update, so here it is. It's now been approximately 5 months since D-Day. That's the moniker I've assigned to the anniversary dinner straight from hell. And my life is demonstrably different. It's not perfect by any stretch, not even consistently great some days if I'm being honest, but it's different in ways that I desperately needed it to be. So, I found myself unpacking some remaining boxes in my new place just last weekend. Yeah, embarrassingly, still unpacking nearly 3 months after moving in here, and stumbled upon an old photo album documenting Grayson's baby years. I ended up sitting there on the floor for what must have been close to 2 hours, just slowly flipping through the pages. It evoked such a peculiar, complex feeling. Looking at photographs of myself beaming with pride while holding him in the hospital, all the while possessing the knowledge I now have. But you know what felt even stranger, in a profound way? I still unequivocally felt like his dad. DNA test be damned. He's my kid. Period. Anyway, a considerable amount has transpired since my last communication, so allow me to attempt to encapsulate it all coherently. Firstly, the divorce was officially finalized last month, a timeline which, according to legal experts, is apparently lightning fast for our particular state. The case took one decisive look at the mountain of presented evidence and essentially informed Maria that she could either accept the proposed settlement terms as they stood or choose to make things significantly more difficult for herself and likely end up receiving even less in the final decree. Wisely, she opted to take the deal. I was granted primary physical custody of Grayson, a monumental victory. I retained ownership of my car and my personal retirement accounts, and I was only required to relinquish 30% of our accumulated joint savings, as opposed to the standard 50%. The house we once shared is currently in the process of being sold. The closing is scheduled for next week, actually, and we will split the proceeds from that sale evenly. My lawyer, Jackin, remarked that I got particularly lucky with the assigned judge, who apparently maintained a zero-tolerance policy towards infidelity. The custody arrangement outcome was perhaps the biggest surprise of all. Maria didn't even put up much of a fight for primary custody. My mom, Gladys, firmly believes this is because Maria inherently knows she's incapable of handling Grayson on a full-time basis now that her own life is in such disarray. Regardless of the reason, it still stings somewhat to acknowledge that she would relinquish that role so relatively easily. Speaking of Maria's life falling apart, yeah, it's objectively not a pretty picture. Following her very public meltdown at the restaurant, which, by the way, BTW, inevitably ended up circulating on TikTok thanks to some opportunistic teenager filming the entire spectacle, things rapidly went downhill for her. Daman ultimately fired her from her position, presumably in a desperate attempt to salvage his own crumbling marriage, so she lost her job. The majority of our previously shared mutual friends inevitably chose sides in the conflict, and regrettably for her, not many aligned themselves with her. She's currently residing in some rather basic, crappy one-bedroom apartment across town and is now working shifts at Target. I'm aware of these details primarily because Grayson occasionally mentions them, not because I'm actively keeping tabs on her situation or anything of that nature. Oh, and concerning Damon, that entire situation imploded in a truly spectacular fashion. Malia and I did eventually meet for that coffee back around month 2 post-D-Day. It was incredibly awkward initially, as you might imagine. I mean, what does one even say to the wife of the man who secretly fathered your wife's child? But surprisingly, she turned out to be genuinely cool. Very different in demeanor from Maria, much quieter and more thoughtfully introspective. She confided that Damon initially attempted to deny everything vehemently, then resorted to blaming Maria entirely, accusing her of seducing him. Finally, cornered, he admitted to the whole sordid affair. They are currently attending couples counseling, attempting to work through their issues, primarily for the sake of their own children. Ultimately, it's not my circus, not my monkeys to manage. Undeniably, the most difficult aspect of this entire devastating fallout has been navigating it with Grayson. I eventually had to explain some version of the truth to him. Specifically, that while I am not his biological father, I remain his dad in every single way that truly matters. He's only 6 years old, so the concept itself is understandably confusing for him. But children possess an incredible adaptability, man. He definitely experienced a rough patch for a few weeks afterward, acting out disruptively at school, experiencing instances of bedwetting again even though he's been fully potty trained for years. However, we promptly sought professional help and got him connected with a therapist who specializes in assisting children navigating complex family situations, which is essentially a fancy way of saying your family dynamic is currently a hot mess. Last month, Damon unexpectedly requested an opportunity to meet Grayson. That initiated a whole separate internal conflict. My immediate visceral reaction was an emphatic hell no, but Grayson's therapist suggested that, in the long run, it might actually prove beneficial for Grayson's understanding of his identity to know who his biological father is. We ultimately arranged a supervised meeting at a nearby public park. Damon was awkward as hell. AF. I arrived bearing an excessive number of presents and clearly possessed absolutely no natural intuition on how to interact with a young child. Grayson was initially shy, but then quickly began treating him like any other random adult, eagerly showing him his collection of Pokemon cards and talking his ear off animatedly about Minecraft. After about an hour, Grayson asked if we could go get ice cream, offering barely a passing goodbye to Damon. Later, in the car, Grayson simply remarked, "He's not as fun as you, Dad." Not gonna lie, NGL. I might have teared up a little bit at that comment. Subsequently, Damon officially signed away his parental rights but did agree to contribute financially through child support payments. Maria predictably threw a fit about this arrangement, assuming she would be the recipient of those payments. Nope. That money is being directed straight into a dedicated college fund established specifically for Grayson. My new place is nothing particularly special. Just a standard two-bedroom apartment situated in a reasonably decent neighborhood, conveniently close enough to Grayson's school that I can still manage drop-offs most mornings. I got him a cool bunk bed for his room, even though he obviously doesn't need the top bunk yet. He thinks it's the absolute coolest thing ever. My mom comes over frequently, offering invaluable help with Grayson whenever I need backup. She has truly been my unwavering rock throughout this entire tumultuous period. Teement itself isn't without its quirks. There's a dishwasher that emits noises suggesting demonic possession, a persistent weird smell lingering in the hallway that nobody can seem to identify the source of, and an upstairs neighbor who apparently practices river dance routines religiously at 2 a.m. But crucially, it's mine. There are no lingering memories of Maria haunting these walls, no hidden lies lurking in the corners, just me and Grayson, focused on creating new positive memories together. And yes, I finally got a dog too. A shelter mutt I named Rex, who faithfully follows Grayson around the apartment as if he were the second coming of Christ himself. Work has served as a welcome and necessary distraction. I received a small promotion last month. Nothing world-changing, just a slight increase in responsibilities accompanied by a modest bump in pay. It was enough, however, that I could comfortably afford to buy Grayson a Nintendo Switch for his birthday without excessively sweating the cost. I've been voluntarily putting in some extra hours, partly for the additional income and partly just to keep my mind occupied and prevent it from dwelling too much on the past. My social life? Well, it actually exists now, which is definitely progress. I joined a local group for single dads I found on Meetup. It might sound kind of lame on the surface, but it's actually been incredibly beneficial to hang out with other guys who genuinely get what I'm going through. We organize activities with the kids sometimes, and other times we just grab beers together without them. Simply talking to other dudes who have navigated similar relationship upheavals helps more than I ever anticipated. I even cautiously started dating again last month. Nothing serious at all, just casual coffee meetups and dinner dates here and there. I met a woman named Ellie through Hinge who seems pretty cool. She has a kid of her own too, so she inherently understands the whole "my kid always comes first" dynamic. I'm taking things exceptionally slow. I still experience random flare-ups of anxiety, worrying that she might be hiding something significant. But my therapist assures me that such feelings are perfectly normal given what I've endured. Yeah, I got a therapist too, focusing on men's mental health and all that important stuff. Maria attempted a reconciliation about 6 weeks ago. She showed up at my apartment completely unannounced, all dressed up, crying profusely about how she made the absolute biggest mistake of her entire life. She claimed she missed her family terribly and professed she would do absolutely anything to fix things between us. For one fleeting half-second, I momentarily remembered the woman I initially fell deeply in love with all those years ago. Then, just as quickly, I vividly remembered her laughing callously with Vivian about how I wasn't Grayson's real dad, and that flicker of warmth instantly vanished. I calmly but firmly told her that we could maintain a civil co-parenting relationship for Grayson's sake, but nothing more beyond that. She did not take the rejection well. The tears initially intensified, then quickly morphed into anger. She accused me of deliberately punishing her, asserting that I had won and should therefore be satisfied. Then, her eyes landed on Ellie's sweater, which happened to be draped over my couch. Nothing inappropriate had occurred. She had simply been cold during a previous visit. Maria completely lost it, launching into accusations that I was having women over while Grayson was present. He was actually staying at my mom's that evening. She accused me of replacing her far too quickly. The profound irony of her accusations was certainly not lost on me. Eventually, I had to actually threaten to call the police just to get her to leave my apartment. She sent a text message the following day, offering a half-hearted apology, but I still invested in a Ring doorbell immediately after that unsettling incident. Best $60 I've ever spent. Vivian also reached out last month, sending me a direct message, DM on Instagram. She claimed she felt absolutely terrible about her role in the whole debacle, bizarrely asserting that she genuinely thought I already knew the truth about Grayson's paternity and was merely pretending not to know for Maria's sake. I obviously informed her in no uncertain terms that I had zero interest in her belated apology or flimsy excuses. I blocked her immediately afterward. Last week marked Grayson's 7th birthday. Maria and I managed to agree to host a small joint party together purely for his benefit. Surprisingly, the event remained remarkably civil. She brought her mom, and I brought mine. Grayson was simply ecstatic to have everyone he cared about gathered together in one place. Maria seemed noticeably subdued throughout the party, almost as if the fight had completely drained out of her. She kept looking intently at me and Grayson, almost like she was trying to permanently memorize the scene. It made me feel distinctly weird, not going to lie. After the party concluded, she asked if we could speak privately for a moment. She informed me that she's planning on moving to Cincinnati to pursue a fresh start. Apparently, she received a better job offer there. She then asked if I would be willing to bring Grayson to visit her sometimes. I responded non-committally that we would figure something out logistically. She's scheduled to leave next month. A part of me feels a sense of relief at her impending departure, while another part feels undeniably sad for Grayson, who will now have his mother living much farther away. But, as I've said before, kids are remarkably adaptable. So, that's essentially where things currently stand. Life inevitably moves forward, you know? Some days, I still wake up feeling residual anger simmering beneath the surface. Other days, I'm just overwhelmingly grateful for the positive aspects I do have in my life. Grayson is clearly thriving now that the constant underlying tension has dissipated from his environment. My new apartment feels progressively more like a genuine home with each passing day. Work is stable and good. Dating remains weird and occasionally challenging, but it's not terrible overall. The other night, Grayson and I were attempting to make pizza from scratch, inevitably creating a colossal mess in my tiny kitchen. He looked up at me, his face adorably smeared with tomato sauce, and said, "Dad, I'm glad we live here now. Mom was always mad at you at the old house. Kids, man, they truly see and absorb everything. I honestly don't know what the future holds for me. Maybe someday down the road, I'll be capable of fully trusting someone intimately again. Maybe I'll always carry that little voice of doubt and suspicion nagging in the back of my head. But what I do know with absolute certainty is that overhearing that fateful Bluetooth conversation, as painful as it was, ultimately turned out to be the best worst thing that ever happened to me. Because living a lie, perpetuating a facade, simply isn't truly living at all. Thanks for accompanying me on this incredibly turbulent journey, Reddit. Your comments, insights, and unwavering support helped me navigate this storm more than you'll likely ever know. I'm officially signing off from this particular saga now. It's time to wholeheartedly focus on building the future instead of constantly reliving the painful wreckage of the past. TLDR, 5 months post-divorce finalization, I have primary custody of Grayson, reside in a new apartment with our dog, Rex, and am actively, slowly rebuilding my life piece by piece. Maria lost her job, alienated most of her friends, and is now moving away to another state. The biological father, Damon, signed away his parental rights but contributes child support. Life certainly isn't perfect, but crucially, it's finally honest now.